Baltic Brand Talks, podcast about all things creative and trending.
Welcome to the Baltic Brand Talks. My name is Aigars. I'm a strategist at Wit Consulting and since recently also co-host of this podcast. For this episode, I had a chat with Ketrisa Petkeviča, marketing manager of the leading intimacy store in Latvia SexyStyle. She has studied cultural sociology and management at the Latvian Academy of Culture and is currently on her way to study her master's. Her mantra is, "Not my circus, not my monkeys," unless it's about sexual education in Latvia. Then all of the monkeys belong in her own ethical circus. I think this introduction already says a lot, but just to give you a bit more, me and Ketrisas talk about stereotypes and taboos that follow sex in general and intimacy store industry, ways of branding and promoting company that can't use traditional advertising, and many more. Personally, I was mostly surprised by the fact how packed SexyStyle brand is, with different topics starting from wellness to healthy relationships to sex education and many others. Hope you enjoy it. Ketris, hi. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi.
Let's start with you. Can you give me your lifelong story short, just a little bit about yourself professionally and personally, and how this life journey bring you to the SexyStyle?
All right. So just really shortly and briefly, I was born in suburbs in Pļaunieki, and I had a very minimal amount of sexual education when I was a kid because of the restrictions the school system had. But I was always a really curious kid and was trying to understand better how this world works. So gradually moving towards when I was 19 and 20, I decided to pursue my studies at Latvian Academy of Culture to study sociology and management because I wanted to, as I said, understand better how this world works through sociology, but also have some practical things to learn for management. And starting from that, I realized I'm really passionate about people and especially about society as a whole and how we work as a society. And then I realized the harsh truth regarding sexual education. And before starting even that, I just saw the numbers regarding violence regarding women, and I realized that there must be a connection. And then for many years, I was thinking about, I would wish to work something related to sexual education or sexuality in general. But we live in a small country, right? So there's not a lot of opportunities to work at this field. And then I saw SexyStyle when I was 20, and it sparked my mind. I thought, oh my God, it must be such a cool place where to work. And yeah, so a year and a bit more ago, I joined SexyStyle to work there at marketing. And now here I am, a year and 3 months later. So yeah.
So it's kind of this your personal and also academical interest that bring you to work in SexyStyle.
Yeah, and it actually perfectly resulted in the fact of how SexyStyle is, branded.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a sex shop where you sell vibrators. You also give lectures on sexuality and you educate people regarding sexuality. And it was so important to me that we don't talk in a very graphic or, let's just say, as it is, stupid way about sexuality and sex, because it's one of our cornerstones in our life. And so it melted together those two aspects that I was both pursuing academically and also from my previous experience regarding work. And it was, the academic side of society and also management. So, it aligned perfectly.
I actually really like that you mentioned the sex in society and also sexual education in Latvia, because I have prepared some questions about that.
Yeah.
Because I believe we all know that it's kind of controversial topic, let's say.
Of course.
We're going to jump into that as well. But before, I have one kind and related question to you, but
okay.
something I'm personally interested in. I stalked you on LinkedIn before we met here, and I noticed that before working in SexyStyle, you also worked in advertising agencies.
Yeah, I did.
And for me, as a person who spent all my life in agencies, I just want to know what's the difference, and maybe there's something you miss from working in agencies, or something that you are happy to leave behind and never do it again.
Yeah, working at advertisement was a hell of a ride. Let's put it that way. I was always curious about advertisement. That's why I joined it as well. I'm actually a very curious person in general, as you're going to hear it throughout the podcast. And, some people warned me that, oh my God, it's such a crazy industry. You're going to have sleepless nights and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm 23 and I want to try it. And so it took me to Moose, which is an advertising agency here in Latvia. And it was a great, almost 2-year-long experience. But I realized at the ending of it that it's too much of a hustle for me, not in a sense that I don't like to work, in a sense that it really takes a toll on my mental health, and the fact that there are a lot of blurred lines between your personal life and your work life, not in the way that people ask about it all the time, but in the way that, sometimes the client wants you to bring in the brief like within 2 working days, but you have several other projects that also need to be done like 30 minutes ago or something. And as you know, there's the saying like, yeah, we needed it yesterday, and now you have to do it for tomorrow. So I realized that's not going to ever work for me.
We also call it dynamic environment.
Yeah, I hate it. I can't swear here, but I hate it so much because it's so stupid to name it a dynamic environment. No, it's just you're breaking boundaries with yourself, right?
Yeah,
so,
I think if any HR person listening to us, that maybe it's time to stop putting this dynamic environment as a perk in a job description.
No, that's not a perk.
Yeah, that's not a perk. Okay, maybe, okay. We're probably not going to go too deep into that.
Yeah, but it's just that's a catchphrase, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's move and talk a bit more about SexyStyle itself.
Yeah.
For someone who never heard about it, how would you explain what SexyStyle is, what it's all about, and what do you offer to people?
All right, so SexyStyle is a moment of advertisement, the leading intimacy store of Latvia. SexyStyle was made 19 years ago as the very, let's say, first intimacy store which combines not just selling products, but also consultation. So, of course, from just looking at it, you seem like, just another sex shop who just sells vibrators and butt plugs and whatnot. But actually, the story behind it is that the owner of SexyStyle, when she was, developing this brand, she realized that whenever she wanted to go and visit an intimacy store, she was always met with this, like dungeon vibe, shop, it's somewhere somewhere in the dungeon, it's like very dark, red neon lights, and she just felt uncomfortable there. And she thought, why do we bring such negative connotation to intimacy? And it's not only about crazy stuff that people can buy or something like that, it's about our wellness. You can buy lingerie there, you can buy vibrators obviously as well, and you can buy lubricants and tampons and whatnot. So she decided that, I want to change that in Latvia. And I want to bring in a new view on sexuality and intimacy. And her very first thought about it was that, no, I don't want to just sell toys. I want to bring in consultation. I want to bring in education with this because she was born in the USSR, so obviously there was no sex education at the time. And a lot of society, a lot of percentage of the society of Latvia is obviously born in the USSR times. So they still have a little information about sexuality. So she wanted to change that. She wanted to bring up this conversation to realize how different we all are regarding our sexuality and how different we feel regarding it. But what combines us is the fact that we do have desire. We do want to feel sexually good in ourselves and in our partnerships and whatnot. So that's how SexyStyle was made and how it still operates right now. Because our main, I would say the main selling point of our brand or the main selling point of our stores is that it is about education. Whenever a person comes into the SexyStyle, and I've seen it by myself, when I was just a regular customer, and now since I've been working there for some time now, that always the consultants are going to ask you, all right, so you chose this, and do you know how to use it? Yeah, we have read online. Or they're like, okay, but do you know that, for example, this and that, it's not the best for beginners, or it's not really the best material for your needs? And they're like, oh no, we didn't know that. And she's like, okay, can I tell you a bit more about it? And then they explain. They're like, okay, if you want to achieve this result, maybe better use this. And also another fact is that it's interesting how there are a lot of places, shops worldwide, while they just try to sell you the most expensive thing, right? They're like, oh no, this is the best. It's the best quality. Actually, when it comes to products, you don't always need to have the best brand or the best quality. And it's never been also the story of SexyStyle because you don't need the most expensive thing. Maybe you need the simplest thing ever. Maybe you don't need a vibrator. Maybe you just need a lubricant. And that's going to solve all your problems. So it's really about educating people. And it's about telling the story of how diverse and vast sexuality is. And sexuality does not start with intercourse and being naked in the bed. It starts with your mindset. It starts with how open you are about your body, other people's bodies, how you feel within the dynamic of the people involved within that. So,
I really like that you mentioned this idea of her seeing the market and wanted to disrupt it, kind of change something, because I believe every time we read a story of successful brand or a company, it always starts like that. You see the issue and you find a solution for that. And I really didn't know this part of the SexyStyle story, but that's super cool. You also mentioned about employees, that they are more like consultants rather than just sales advisors.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you achieve that? Do you train them specifically, or there's a guidebook or anything?
Yeah, so first of all, whenever a new employee comes in, they have the first 3 months as everyone else, right, about the starting period. But they have the consultations regarding the fact of how they should be as a consultant. So we have guidelines of how to be the best consultant and salesperson at the same time. And we also have video materials that you have to watch. You have to speak with the other people, other consultants, to reach the best decision regarding what the customer needs the most. And also it's about us cooperating with other brands that we, for example, buy our toys from, and we are like, okay, that's nice to have a new toy, for example, but we need an educational background for it. So we schedule let's say a seminar, and it's usually like 2 hours long, and they tell everything starting from how it was made to what is the best for use. So it's not just about, okay, it's a new brand, let's just sell it. It's like, okay, who needs it? Where are we going to have it? What's something that is unique about it? Why is it better than that? Or why is it just a different version of that? So yeah, it's not just about importing products and being like, okay, buy everything. You need everything. You actually don't need everything. Usually it can be solved within one thing. So yeah.
Okay, wow. But you also mentioned quite a lot of different products that you sell in SexyStyle. If you don't disclose any confidential information, but maybe you can tell me what your best-selling products or product categories are.
So usually it can be divided into 3 categories. So the most popular one is lubricants, definitely. And the second one is toys. And the third one is condoms. So actually, it's mostly about the pleasure of enjoying sex. So it's not more or less about the fact that it needs to be crazy. I think people have this misconception about intimacy stores. It's like, oh my God, only creeps go there, or only crazy people go there. All they want to do is fist each other. It's like, that's not even in top 10 of our products. Like, people come in to actually ask, okay, for example, I was just pregnant, my baby is 2 months old, and I want to rekindle my relationship with my husband, I want to rekindle our sexual life, but how can I do it if it's painful? And then we can say, okay, first of all, you go to a doctor, obviously, if there's something that we cannot advise, but hey, maybe you just need a better lubricant, so that it's better for your health, and it also doesn't disrupt the vagina and so on. So yeah, it's just, it's sexual health. It's not about you being a salesperson who just says, yeah, just buy everything and you have a really big problem. No, it's about consulting. So yeah, it's about talking to people, understanding what their needs are. And there are a lot of people who are really shy still talking about it. So yeah.
But it's so great how you build this place where people can come for advice, not just a product.
Yeah, I love that about SexyStyle when I first only saw it for the first time. Because I remember I was coming in, I was really shy. I was like 21 years old. And I was like, oh my God, this is really overwhelming, right? There's so many things. And back in time, as you might know, we have a new store that's been now for a year in the city of Center on Tarpatasa. But before that, we had on Baronela. And the idea behind it was that on the first floor, you could buy all the regular stuff like lingerie, condoms, lubricants, like everything that is usually for everyone under 18. And then when you wanted something over 18, so sex toys, you had to go upstairs. And also the idea behind it was that you go up to get better.
Okay.
So basically it's like you climb the mountain to reach the final destination. So yeah, and then you go in, you're like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. And then they just come, they're like, hey, can I help you maybe? Like, do you need some help? And sometimes you're like, no, I can do it all by myself. And you're like, okay, actually I can't. And they're like, okay, so what are your interests? Or yeah, what do you want?
Yeah, but also we talk about this store that you can get an advice here, and employee always gonna help you. But also I know that in your store you can go inside if you're not 18 years old, right?
Yeah.
And also I believe that some people might be, as you also mentioned, a bit shy. Maybe it's a bit overwhelming to go inside of the store. But you also have an online store, and if I'm correct, you also have this disclosed packaging. Then when you receive an item, no one gonna see what you actually order. Do you think it's anyhow affects your sales, that like more sales coming from a retail store or online store?
So basically, yeah, you cannot come into the store if you're not 18 years old. We actually do check IDs because it's the law. We do not break the law. So yeah, you can only enter the store when you're 18, and we check the ID or the documents you need it. And also on the online website, you can only do it when you're 18 because of the disclaimer. But coming from the idea of retail-wise, actually, when we first started with SexyStyle 19 years ago, the owners were a bit, not shy, but scared about the idea of opening a retail store because the first thing was online store. Mm-hmm. There was no retail, real life stores before that. So a few years later, they were like, okay, no, you know what? Let's go. Let's open up a real store. And they were really worried that maybe nobody's going to come in. But it was always bright. It was always these pink and bright colors. And since the very first year, it was 50-50, and it's been that way ever since for 19 years. 50% coming from retail and physical stores, 50% roughly comes in from online purchases. So yeah, people shop in both ways. And there are sometimes during the year when more people shop online, right? There are sometimes when more people shop in stores. So, but usually it's 50-50.
Okay, that makes sense, of course, but at the same time, just thinking the way you explain the store, how much advice you can get there, and of course you can get that in online store. You just need to choose yourself. Okay, maybe you can Google something and read description, but you don't get this person who can lead you through this, as some of the examples you mentioned.
Yeah, you can buy something, and obviously you can. So you feel more discreet, right, whilst buying online because nobody can see me. Only, you can see my order and stuff like that. But you don't have the consultations. You can actually buy something that is not suitable for you, in a way that you want it to be suited, right? So, or you can buy something that is completely not what you expected because you just saw the packaging, you thought it looks cute, but actually does not do the thing you wanted it to do. So yeah, I usually advise to come in and step away from shyness and just come in and talk because all of those people talk about sex on their daily lives regularly. They're not going to be shaming you. They're not going to be thinking, oh my God, this is a crazy person. We have heard everything. Trust me, we have. And nothing, I think, can shock us anymore. It's not like we always hear shocking stories. It's just the fact that, there are people who have been working there for 5 years. So they have heard pretty much everything. So no, your question about something you think and for you is strange or weird or shy, it can be for you and we can understand that. So we're not going to be, oh, well, don't you know that? Nobody is going to try and affect you that way. We're going to talk nicely about the fact that, okay, we understand that can be a problem. Actually, it can be maybe a common problem for a lot of women or men.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, but I get that there is no single answer for that, but can you paint me a picture of a SexyStyle audience? Who are the people who are going into your store? Is it more men or women, straight people, gay people, older people, younger people, or maybe there is something that unites them, a need or a mindset, anything?
So what unites them is, I think, my previous answer is the fact that all, desire unites them, right? The curiosity that they're, it's so in our nature to be interested in something sexual, and it's part of our daily life, and it's completely normal to have sexual fantasies or sexual needs. So that's what unites them. They all want to feel like a connection or feel loved or feel good in their bodies and their sexuality. That's what unites them. And talking of the audience spectrum, everyone comes in. We have had people starting from the age of 18 till 70 plus.
Okay.
And actually, another funny thing is that we have seen more couples either in their 20s, so mid-20s, or late 50s. So couples within the reach of 30 till 45 is not as common as the younger ones, or the older ones. And it usually can be explained by the fact that, hormones can be really wild when you're really young and you're just exploring your sexuality. You're usually not the best in bed, and you're usually also don't know the best your body.
Okay.
But when you're 50 years old and older, well, usually the kids are raised, right? You know your partner very well. You either want to spice it up a bit, or you just have the time to finally make love again in a very healthy, committable way, right? So it makes sense to me that it's either the ones who have hormones all over them or are just starting their sexual life, or the ones who already know their bodies so well, they're like, okay, we need this because we know each other, right? So but everything in between. And there's just a bit of a difference between how people talk about their sexuality and needs within those age groups. So, for example, if we think about the age group of 18 till like 30, they are more eager to talk about their sexuality because there's the generation difference. So, for example, Gen Zs and early millennials, they're more open to talk about their needs, their sexuality, their differences. However, for example, the generation who are over 50 years old, they are usually more shy and timid to talk about their sexual needs. And usually it comes because of the USSR background, because obviously there was no sex in the USSR. So they don't know how to talk about it really well, or they think that nobody needs that, or that I'm fine, you weirdos just need it, although there are no weirdos in this place. Like, none of your sexual well-being matters is a weird thing, until it's consensual, obviously. So it's just that, you need to know how to talk about it, and we have not had a solid background information for sexual education. So obviously the Gen Zs, who are, for example, the younger generation starting from 18, they have heard all of the information already on the internet, which is not always the best thing, because if we talk honestly, most of the kids learn sexuality for the first time from porn. And obviously it's not the best place to watch and learn about your sexuality.
Yeah, standards may be a bit different. Yeah,
but at the same time, they can Google something or they can ask ChatGPT nowadays. So it's just, it's easier for them to access information. So so they're more eager to talk about it.
Yeah, basically what I hear from you, that this stereotype about intimacy stores, I always want to say sex shop, but I realize that this correct name is an intimacy store. And the stereotype is that it's only for some weird kinks and stuff like that it's not for normal, regular people like me. I'm not going to do that. And you also mentioned that Gen Z are kind of a bit better in that because, of course, they have a little bit more context from online and social media, etc. But do you think these attitudes changed over time in general, like for our bigger society, or what's the stigma is behind?
Well, this is a very loaded question, in my opinion, because, we have to unpack a lot of details when it comes down to sexual well-being, sexual health, and sexual education. So I don't want to promote any politicians on this podcast, but because of the 2015 issue of the tikumības likums in Latvia, there has been an uproar regarding what our children should or should not learn. And because of that, there are a lot of people who still think that their children, for example, should not know anything about sex education. And that's really sad. But one thing which is good is that starting from September, it's going to be in a curriculum for teachers at schools to learn basics of sexual education. And the idea behind it is that any child can find a supportive teacher to whom to, talk to or confess their fears or whatever else. And the teacher must be educated enough to at least guide them to another information guide,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
But the sad situation is that I read this review from Rīgas Tradiņu Universitāte. They did a research about sexuality and well-being in 2024, so it's completely new research. And turns out that most of the people of Latvia do not use condoms. They do not do anything in regards of their sexual health. And that's why when we talk about sexuality in Latvia, it's not just taboo because we don't talk about it. It's also an actual problem because currently Latvia is number 1 in sexually transmissive diseases in Europe. We have the highest amount of HIV patients in Latvia from all European countries. And funnily enough, you probably know how it was said as a gay epidemic, right, in the 80s because only gays did that. Actually, 33% of couples who have HIV are heterosexual couples, the biggest amount of all the percentage. 9% is from drug usage. 6% is within gay men. So actually, it's a heterosexual disease, not a gay disease. And it's because people in Latvia do not use condoms. They think it's no problem. They feel like, no, I don't want to use that. I don't want to use any contraception. And that's a massive problem. And that's at the start of sexual education, that when you have sex, you have consequences. And the biggest consequence you can have is pleasure in a good way. The worst one is HIV. And obviously, we don't need to talk with people in a way that, oh, I'm going to scare you, so sex is either HIV or baby, right? So no, you talk about the fact that it's pleasurable and should be consensual, but also keep in mind you can have sexual transmissive diseases because of it. If you do not use protection, that's why we need sexual education. It's not about raising crazy kids or weird kids. You actually raise kids understanding their body, naming their genitalia, naming what they want, what they do not want, what they like, what they don't like. They're learning consent, they're learning pleasure, and they don't have to learn the pleasure aspect at the age of 9. But at the age of 9, they should know what their genitalia is. And this
their
is
own bodies at least.
Exactly. Why can we name kidneys? Why can we name lungs? And we can name a clitoris?
But we usually came up with a funny name for that.
No, and that's horrible. We have so many stupid names for genitalia. Gaialit. It's like, what the hell? Why would you name that? Please talk to your children in a normal way. You do not say smadzenite when you talk to your kid. So I would just say gaialit is when you talk about your penis. That has a name. And it's actually a correct medical term. So there's no need to be, funny about it. You can talk in a normal way because the kid does not think it's funny. The kid will start to understand, okay, that's how we talk about it. Because that's the way mom also talks about brain and kidneys and lungs. So I can talk about my genitalia also in a normal, humanizing way. We do not dehumanize our bodies. And that's a massive problem because that's the core of our sexual well-being, that we know how to name us, that we know how to name our body. And in SexyStyle, we have heard so many stories about how people just don't understand what consent is. And not in a way that our clients do not understand what consent is, but in a way how they have, had situations where, well, he wants to do that, I don't feel good about it. And we're like, okay, first of all, we're not going to sell you anything if you do not want it. Obviously, we can sell if you really want it because you feel like you need to do it, but I think there's a different story behind it, right? Why do you think you need to do that? Is it consensual? Is it something you actually want to do? Or is it something you're pressed on doing? And that's a very crucial matter. It's not about just selling product. It's about understanding what they're coming from. So, I don't know if I answered to your question, though. So
I'm not sure if you answered my question because I don't remember my question, but you definitely mentioned a lot of these pressing societal issues that I totally agree with you. And I also agree that most of them, like the stereotypes and taboos coming from absence of sexual education. But what's your take? Is there something that SexyStyle can do about it? Or maybe it's a little bit too much to ask from a brand, or it's not something that you can influence?
I do think we influence, because I think from just coming to our store and talking, for example, for the first time about, hey, I don't really enjoy sex, can you help me? Is a massive step through the problem. Coming to our in live classes, talking about the fact that we have so many master classes on beginning with how to talk with children about sexual education, ending with BDSM, it differs vastly. I don't want to think that we are the game changers in the whole Latvia, but I do think that brands have an impact on how people view themselves, how people view society, and how they feel in the society. So I think that because of SexyStyle, this is a better society in a way. I don't mean it in a way that, oh my God, we are now pacifists and the war is going to end because of us. But at least that percentage of people who come to us and who talk with us and who just research or follow our social media where we post different, articles about sexuality, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Or, oh, I didn't know you can talk about it in a nice mannered way. Then that's already a bonus. That's good for me. That's good enough for me. I don't want to change the whole world because I cannot do that. But I can change maybe one person's perspective on what is sexual health, or maybe what is pleasure, or maybe the fact that you don't have to be ashamed of your body. So, it's good enough for me.
There's that much what brand can do, and then there's territories that brand can't really influence. But I believe that some of our listeners at this point already would be quite surprised by the amount of things SexyStyle have behind them, that it's not just about selling sex toys or the skinks or BDSM or whatever. It's actually have way more behind it. And I don't know if you know about it, but recently we had this Latvian Design Award, and there was this modular furniture, basically a chair, that looks like a regular chair during the day, but you can transform it into this BDSM chair. And I know it got an award. I think it's super cool. Maybe it's also showing some changes in our views, that we can accept more things than we were ready to accept before. I don't know, but I know that SexyStyle also working not only in Latvia from recently. Do you think that this whole thing we discussed is somehow different in Lithuania or Estonia?
Well, as you know, we don't have retail stores in Lithuania and Estonia, so we can't really tell everything about the society, but we can tell from the manners of purchasing. So, for example, when we have to talk about our 3 Baltic countries, there are some differences in the patterns of how we shop. So, for example, Latvians are the ones who are usually really diving deep into the research. They're like, okay, who has the best quality? What is the price performance versus the quality? Where can I buy it? How long is it going to last me? They're really rational about their buyings. They're not like shoplifters or something. And the Lithuanians, they're more conscious about how much they're going to spend their money on. So they're usually but they're usually comparing prices of the items. So they're more money conscious. Estonians, however, have always had the influence of Finland because them being next to them, right? So they always think about what their country partners are doing as well. Not country partners, but their neighbors are doing. And there have always been, this interesting fact about how we all shop, not just in 21st century, but how it has been, for example, 100 years ago. Because, for example, Lithuanians can go down to Poland to buy for cheaper, right? Because the stuff in Poland is cheaper. Latvia is in the middle. We have what we have in our own, country. And Estonians have something from the north. So it really does impact on how we view what we need. And also, Estonians have a lot of small cities in Estonia in general. So they really rely on what their, for example, kins or neighbors say or family says. So it's a word of mouth, which matters a lot in Estonia. So so those are a few differences we can name when looking at how people shop. So
I also want to talk a bit about sex in the pop culture, because pop culture influence everything in our life. It also can be a source of education. Again, as you said, maybe not the best one, but at least it's something that got you thinking about something.
Point,
And recently I read this article that was called "Everybody's Beautiful Now, but No One is Sexy." And what it meant that, if you maybe remember, in the beginning of 2000s, everything was super hypersexualized. Magazine covers with the naked woman on them, music videos with a lot of half-naked people making love, etc., etc. And then it suddenly kind of changed because of a new ethical norms, because of this cancel culture, because many media outlets and advertising as well were kind of afraid of using sex or using this intimacy. But now we feel that maybe it's coming back. For example, from social media, people share about their sexual life super openly. People share about their kinks. We also have a lot of movies like Saltburn, Baby Girl. We have Sabrina Carpenter's new album. We have Calvin Klein campaigns with Bad Bunny and Jeremy Allen White that went super viral on social media. So I think maybe sex is coming back in the pop culture. And I was researching this topic a bit as well. And what I read is that sex is back, but this time through an inclusive lens, symbolizing empowerment, escape, autonomy, and joy.
That's what I wanted to add.
You're agreeing with that. Okay, I just wanted to ask you, what's your take on this whole thing?
You just took words out of my mouth.
Oh, sorry.
So, first of all, I don't think it started with 2000s. We have been sexualizing women, especially, since the beginning of time, I think. We can look at the advertisements of Mad Avenue in the 60s, how they were treating women with, nylon stockings. And, I think almost everyone who's working in advertising marketing has seen Mad Men, right?
Yeah.
So how Don Draper said, I sell stockings, but it's not stockings I sell. I sell the feeling you need while you need stockings. And the fact is that people have over-sexualized other human beings for so long that we are fed up with it. And thanks to the feminist movement, we have started to realize that it's not just about one person who doesn't like it. A lot of women feel like they're being, used just for views. And what I think about the fact that we are talking about sex nowadays, it doesn't mean that we have been more Puritanian or something. It just means that we have evolved to talk about sex differently. And there's a massive difference between, for example, sex and intimacy. Sex can be intimacy, well, a part of intimacy, but there are also types of sex where there is no intimacy at all. And usually when you look at the 2000s or 60s, okay, 60s maybe not much, it was more about the aesthetics, but 2000s, it's about sex as a tool, right? To influence the audience to buy something in quite a rough manner. And I don't mean spanking better. I just mean the way how women and men have been looked at and, stationed in the advertisement. When we think about advertisements and sexuality nowadays, it's more about the fact that we talk about it inclusively. We talk about the fact there are not just men and women who enjoy sex. And usually in the older advertisements, it was the man who was enjoying the sexuality and the sex, and the woman was just, a lamppost next to it. For example, with all the Dolce & Gabbana advertisements where woman is lying on the ground, and the guy is pulling her by the hair and whatever. So, yeah, there comes the Sabrina Carpenter, I guess, as well. But that's another discussion. And
that's a big topic.
That's a big topic, and it's a very controversial topic. Okay, it's funny when controversial about a pop artist, which just has an album, right? Like, we have other more important things to think about. But anyhow, it's just the fact that we have learned, I hope, in a way, to talk more normally about sexuality. And I have also seen a lot more people on Instagram and TikTok talking about their sexuality in a healthy way. In the fact they're like, okay, you know what? There are some anonymous submissions, for example, for what my trouble with my sexuality is or whatnot. And they respond normally. And they're like, okay, listen, this is a very common thing for a man. Like, have you tried this? Or have you read this? Or have you tried that? But also, we are finally focusing on also women's aspects. Like, the fact that we have started talking about the side effects of oral contraception for the first time is groundbreaking, because for so many years, women have been drinking it because, you're the one who can be pregnant and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it's just a more inclusive way. And there's still a lot of work to do about that. And I just think that it's a good sign that we as a society, at least in America or in Northern Europe, we have evolved regarding the fact of how we can talk about it. And also when you mentioned the fact of how it affects the sales, for example, the country where people buy sex toys the most is Denmark.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean that it comes to SexyStyle, right? But just in general, Denmark and Sweden, if I'm not mistaken, are two biggest sex toy buyers in the whole Europe. And then when you look worldwide, it's USA usually, because obviously how many people can be in the USA, how many can be in Denmark, right? And actually, when you think about who buys the toys the most, gender-wise, it's women who buy toys more, and sexuality-wise, it's bisexual people. Because bisexual people are usually more curious to see and study their sexuality, since they are attracted to both genders, right? So, yeah.
You also mentioned the sales and what affects them, and I think we kind of discussed it in a bit deeper level. But if we go back a bit, do you see, not mandatory from SexyStyle, but in general, these spikes or changes in sales based on some events? I will give you an example. You probably know this lipstick effect, that during the time of crisis, people want to buy these little pleasures or little things to make themselves more happy. Do you think that anything can also affect these intimacy sales?
Well, I think what affects intimacy sales is the fact of how you speak to the audience about it. I think you can see that by the change of also how SexyStyle's marketing has been changing within these 18 years, where at first it was more, 2000 style, because it was just the style of the era. And now it's more about educational background also in the marketing. And also you have to keep in mind that, when SexyStyle first started, they didn't have a marketing team. They were just the ones who owned it and sold toys and, consulted at the same time. They were also marketing managers. Yeah. And they were person orchestra, right? So, and it's just, now you have a team, you have specialists, you have people like me who come and work in there solely for marketing. And it's just different. So yeah, it affects how you talk to people. It affects it affects on how many different messages you delay. So, for example, we talk on our social media, as you can see from our posts, about sexual well-being, sexual health, but we also have some fun and, not that serious content, because you don't want to just talk about sex in a very rigid or educational way. You also want it to be pleasurable and fun, because sex can be fun and it should be fun. And that's also how we, want to combine that, which you can, I hope, see by our social media, especially differences between, for example, Instagram and TikTok, where TikTok is more fun-based, because it's a content where you usually post more, I'm doom scrolling. I just want something to relax, right? And you scroll TikTok. So, yeah.
I really like that you started talking about the sexy style marketing, because it's actually our next topic. And if I'm honest, I would be ready to talk for hours with you about our previous topic about sex in society, about how it affects us, about sexual education. But we're a podcast about all things creative, and our audience are mostly marketing people. So maybe we can go in this direction now. And you mentioned your marketing team, and that before there was none. Can you tell me more about it? How many people are you there? And do you do everything by yourself, or maybe you have agencies that help you with something as well?
Okay, so in the marketing team, we are 3 people, and we do everything by ourselves. We are copywriters, we are content creators, we're social media managers, we are advertisement specialists, Google Ads specialists, Facebook market specialists.
Swiss knife, basically.
Yeah, it's like our CVs are just like, I can do this and that, and what can you do? No, I'm just kidding. But we do everything. Like, for example, we have a specific person who's just a graphic designer on our team, so we do not have that as another tool that we have to hire, right? So no, we have a person in-house who does it. And for example, me and my colleague, we both work more for the marketing, not just not solely graphic design, but specifically marketing as a whole package, right? And he, for example, works more for the videos. Like, he does TikTok videos, he does YouTube videos, he colors them and whatnot, something I can do. And I'm, for example, more of a copywriter, project manager, and everything that wise. But anyhow, we work as a team. And when somebody needs an advice and we're like, okay, listen, I cannot think of an idea. Like, can you help me? We're like, okay, listen, let's go have a brainstorm together, and then we come up with something. So it's not just about, okay, I do this, you do that, and actually it's none of my business. No, it's not like that. There are no specific departments like, okay, you only do that, and I'm not gonna touch this. No, we collaborate. We're like, okay, we're a whole team. It doesn't matter who gets job done. It's the fact that we get the job done. So yeah.
Okay, and I know that you produce quite a lot of content. You already mentioned videos and stuff, and you also mentioned that you have these topics that you bring in your social media, for example, like this wellness. Can you lead me through more topics that are important for SexyStyle, and that are on your, let's say your communication plan, that we talk about wellness, maybe we talk about something else, maybe there is like agenda or idea that you want to bring to society through your brand and your communication?
Well, I think our marketing strategy aligns with the whole branding idea behind it, because the main purpose of SexyStyle is not just to sell, as I said before, but to educate. So it's really important for us to communicate that also through our social media, from our digital marketing. And that's why it's so important that we do have educational posts. We have, for example, a blog, which is quite new, but we do put there, as anyone can see, that there are posts, for example, on how to start your sex journey through toys. What are some of the advices for beginners? Or, for example, there's the content that I'm writing about sexual myths and surrounding every information surrounding sexual myth, where we debunk the myths. But at the same time, we also understand that it can also be fun to talk about sex. And it can be fun to make a dirty joke if you make it in a normal way, right? So, and it's just what matters to us that we combine those two worlds, and we understand that we have different social media pages for that. So it's not like you can put every content you have in just one page and it's going to work brilliantly. Well, better than me, you're a strategist. You have to have a strategy for each content place, right? So, that's why you can see it differs from one social media to another. And it's important that, for example, we think about the fact that nowadays also Instagram is changing, and the fact that you have to post more stories than just post, and you have to post more reels than just posts. And we also align with that. So yeah, it's what matters. It matters that you go and follow through what are the not just trends, but the changes within the social media community. And community is not the right word, but the social media in general, the world of it. And it matters that you do follow other content creators, and it matters that you see, for example, how others in Europe are doing that, right? Because they're also leading examples of marketing campaigns of sex world or intimacy world, let's be precise, in Germany, in Netherlands, in America. So it's important to follow them because you're like, oh, I didn't think of this idea. That's such a cool reel, right? Can we maybe make it? And you're like, okay, but let's just add it to our Latvian audience style, right? So it's not just let's just copy it right through. It's like, okay, but they're not getting the context. It's not really popular in Latvia. Like, okay, how can we adjust it? But I like the idea, the concept behind it. So you try to twist and change it a bit so it aligns better with your own things. And it's just very important for me, at least, to also have this fun aspect of, international days, which you can see on our social media. We're like, today is National Orgasm Day. So you know what? 20% off on best-selling toys. So it's like, okay, you do not give like everything, but you're just like, okay, just for this one day, I just have it all because orgasm, like sexy style, come on, it goes hand in hand. So
that's a great reason for a sale,
Yeah.
But I really like how you find this balance between educational and funny content, because actually last year we made this research where we find out that Latvians prefer this educational content, but the second place is for the funny content. So I believe if the brand can find this perfect balance or find a way how to combine these two, that's a right spot to hit on. You mentioned brand strategy, so let's talk about this as well. I recently was listening to this podcast about Tinder brand strategy, and I found it very interesting, so I also want to share it with you. But basically, the way they came up with that, they realized that everybody associates Tinder with hookups, and no matter what they do, they're not going to be able to change it. People still will be thinking that Tinder is for the hookups. So what they realized that they're not going to rebrand Tinder, they're going to be rebranding hookups itself. And what they said that every relationship starts with the hookup, and there is every 3 seconds a relationship starts on Tinder. That was their idea. So they basically wanted to change how people see hookups, that maybe it's not as bad as we originally think about them. And coming back to SexyStyle, how would you describe your own brand positioning or brand purpose or brand role or whatever we call it these days? Maybe there is like a similar idea behind, maybe there is something that you also want to challenge. I know that you have this tagline about adult playground, but I believe there is more to that.
Yeah, so I think what is really mentionable is the fact that we have rebranded SexyStyle, and the fact that the rebranding was done a year and a bit more ago because of the 18th anniversary of our brand. So, before that it was really like girlishly pink, like Barbie pink, and this cursive and so on. So it was like a very like cutesy,
Well, Barbie movie got kind of popular a few years ago, so maybe that
I know,
was on trend.
We are 19 years old now, so it's a bit different.
You don't sell dolls?
No, we...
Oh, actually, I think you do.
We do, I think. Yeah, I think that's not really my department, but yeah, I do think we do. Yeah, I think so. And we realized, okay, 18 is, big. So we're turning mature now. And we wanted to show that maturity also in our logotype and also in the fact of how we decorate the store. So yes, we kept the pink, we kept the brightness. We wanted it to be open and bright and flowy. Wanted it to be that you come in and you're like, oh, okay, this is not a creepy place. This is like an open space. It's an open space. It's an invitation to a talk. And then we wanted to make the whole brand look more mature. So we switched to caps lock, more or less, for the SexyStyle brand logo. And also we changed the tonality of the color. So now it's like a deep pink, it's not just Barbie pink. It's like, okay, we're older now, we're more mature.
You're 18 years.
Yeah, we're 8. Now we're 19, we're not teens anymore. Like, yeah, Barbies are nice, obviously, but we have aged, matured a bit. So that's how the SexyStyle logo changed and how the whole color scheme changed. But also the fact of, do you know how SexyStyle name got the name?
No, not really.
So basically, before SexyStyle, there was this website, like internet website, Xnet, which was one of the leading services of Latvia, for selling things online. And it started with the fact that nobody in 2000s knew what, like, shipping or just buying things on the internet was.
Yeah, actually.
And then they thought, okay, how are we going to name it? And they were like, well, the X in maths is the unknown. So it's like you have to understand what the X is. You have to figure it out, right? By combinations or just writing down.
Okay.
They were like, okay, it's going to be Xnet because it's the unknown internet. So they were like, okay, xnet.com is our website. And then they realized that no, the owner realized that she's like, no, I want to just solely purpose on education and the fact that sex is such an undiscovered feel like niche thing in Latvia, although it shouldn't be that way. And she was like, well, how can we name it? And she was like, wait, but it's the X is the unknown for Latvian society as well. The fact that they don't know anything about sex, it seems like. We don't talk about it. So we have to keep the X in it. And they were like, okay, but it's regarding sex, right? So maybe let's just name it SexyStyle because it was really popular in 2000s to have style at the end of the brand, you know?
Okay, yeah.
And they were like, SexyStyle, that's our X, which is the hidden meaning, which is the meaning that, okay, how are we going to figure out what the X is? We have to figure out our sexuality, and the style was just an addition. So, yeah.
Okay, I love the story, honestly.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, the name proved itself during these many years already as it used. But I also think you have this one similar thing, like the common thing with the pink color, like the sexy style and the pink color, because that's the color that has a lot of stereotypes about it. We say that it's only for girls. Of course, a man not gonna wear pink. It's not for women, but for girls, for young girls. If you're more than 20, you can't. Yeah. And I think that maybe there is also like some parallels between sexy style and pink also in this way. But we already talked that you need to be 18 to buy something from SexyStyle. We also know that this European law says that sex toys are basically this adult content, so minors not supposed to see it pretty much at all. We talk about absence of sexual education, about the stigma, etc., etc. There is a lot on your table. So basically kind of traditional advertising off the tables for you. How do you do it then? How do you find your audience or new audience? And
well, you know, the thing about sex is everyone likes it.
okay.
So it's not actually that hard to talk about it. It's just you have to find the right way to talk about it. And I like the idea behind it that maybe if you want to research something about sexuality or sex or intimacy, you have SexyStyle account. And that's why we have, for example, the monthly myth debunking on our social media. It's not just about, debunking myths surrounding, I don't know, penis or something. It's about, okay, women orgasms, queer sex, etc. And it's about the fact that you have to understand what people would like to see or know. And how can you do that? By experimenting. Like, there's no right answer. The groups of people who watch your content, they're going to differ from country to country. So you have to understand that we will have to try and maybe fail at first, because maybe at first it's not going to work out. And maybe you're going to realize, no, you know what, we could have filmed that differently, or we could have written it differently, or we could have used like a gallery option, or maybe it should be a reel. And then you find out what works. So it's all through fail and discover stage. And then we started with that. We started with educating, and we realized how much potential there is because people really like those educational posts, for example. And then we realized that people are more interested in viewing the real life people behind the team of SexyStyle. For example, whenever you see the posts we have regarding our own team, it's like, wow, people are like, oh my God, real people. And that's common. It's common for every, I think, brand. That whenever you post like a real person behind, it's like, oh my God, we can see their face or something, right? So yeah.
And they're not weird.
Yeah, they're not weird. Well, no, everyone's weird, but it's just weird in their own fancy, unique way, right? So yeah, I think it's about the fact that if you don't know how to address your target audience, you're just going to have to try it first. I'm sorry, there's like, I cannot give you a safe option of what's going to obviously work, because nothing is going to obviously work on social media. What always works is sales, and you don't even need that much social media for that, I think, right? It's just sales. So yeah, but it's about the message behind it. Why people follow someone on social media? Is it just because they post sales? Well, maybe there's one account which is like good for you. They're like, okay, all the sales are on this Instagram account. That's education. The meaning behind the account is that there are sales only. I'm not going to see like baby reindeers there. I'm not going to see like SpongeBob SquarePants there. It's just about sales. So when you post, for example, on this intimacy store page, you're like, okay, what are we gonna post? And then you realize how vast the sexuality sphere actually is. and that you can see on our social media. Yes, we do talk also about sales. Obviously, we're a business. Like, I'm not an NGO. So, but we also talk about all things sex, sexuality, wellness, intimacy. So you have to realize how vast your brand can be in a way of how many messages can you deliver. And then you can realize that branding is actually just storytelling. You tell the story of what matters, right? And what matters for your brand is going to differ from my brand, and that's completely fine. You just have to find it. I know I sound like I've been working in marketing for 30 fucking years, although I have not. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's a great reply. Honestly, I really like this idea about the storytelling and about this content you produce, because you realize, okay, people have interest, people have desires, maybe they don't have much sources to go to read about it, and then you give them that. And also we already discussed, and I feel everybody can feel it from our discussion, that this topic is so packed. There is so many different subtopics that you can choose. You can talk about wellness, you can talk about relationships, you can talk about pleasure, so many different topics. And of course, if you use them in your communication, you can reach these different people.
And I think what matters is that our team is really powerful, is the fact that we have so many interesting people in our team. For example, I come from a sociology background. So basically, I know a lot about, like all things society. We have our leading store manager who is a psychologist and who is also a sexual wellness educator. So whenever you have, let's say, a specific question, or you think it's a weird question, you're like, I don't know how that works. You're like, okay, Eva, come here, please. Like, can you answer me? She's like, sure, because she has studied that. And then we have our CEO who's like all business, and he's like, okay, no, you know what? Let's better do this that way. So it's about the team and how you find the perfect matching team. It's about the fact that we all are unique in our own way. And I know we're not that unique. Everyone says they're unique and blah, blah, blah. But actually, it works so well. It fits like a glove. Because I come from my background, he comes from his background, and we all have this combination of wanting to produce the best content. And then, for example, our CEO has also joined our TikToks or Instagram Reels, you know? So it's like he's not just the one big boss who's just sitting there in the corner and just, writing down the sales percentages. He's like, no, okay, let's do it together. And actually, people really love those videos. Like, it's crazy. We had like 48,000 views on like videos with him. Just like him telling, hey, it's Christmas time, sales on SexyStyle. And they're like, yeah, we love you. We're like, all we did was just put him in a video.
I believe
and it worked because of him.
This growing trend on using employees as creators or these influencers, and it's working.
But it's not like we stated, it's like, okay, this is the CEO. It's they're like, oh my God, that is the guy. That is the CEO from their other post. And they're like, they click. And we're like, yep, that's our CEO.
That's him. We talk about influencers a bit. I also know that you have some experience with influencers, quite a lot.
Do.
Maybe you can tell me more about it. Maybe there's some funny stories, because I would say maybe you're not the regular product influencers used to receive in their PR boxes. And
yeah, so it was a challenge for us a year ago, because when we made our marketing strategy, we also, one of the things we wanted to do was find more influencers who would be willing to work with us. And obviously, this is a niche product, right? But at the same time, we're quite well known in Latvia. And so it was not actually that hard to find. It was harder to understand which ones we want to work with. And so we realized that we need different content creators for different things and for different messages. So, for example, we have content creators who are more focused on the funny aspect, right? So, for example, we have Rihards Gromuls, who has been our influencer for years. We love him dearly, but he's always the one who gives it from the funny side. And, we love it about him. We love the fact that he can joke freely about sexuality. He can joke freely about weird sex toys. He can, like, everything. He has no, I would say,
boundaries.
Yeah, not even that. It's like he has no stamina. Like, he has stamina regarding the fact of how much jokes he can make in 1 minute or something. And then we have, for example, Anna Apsite, which is actually a fitness influencer, more or less. But the fact that she, I found her a few years ago. I started following her content, and I loved how simply she explained things, and how there was science behind it, and how much I saw her growth within those few years on Instagram. And I realized, I think I want her as my influencer for SexyStyle, because she combines those qualities I wish to see in our brand's ambassadors. So it's the fact that she can talk freely about all things health, and intimacy is a part of health. Sexual health is part of health. And she also talks about it in a mature, but also like sweet way, you know? And her audience is really growing, and her audience is not like thousands and millions of followers. We don't need that. It's not all about the amount of followers you have. It's about the fact of how you can produce content, how reliable you are, how do people trust your content. And I really did trust her content, because whenever I heard her saying something about fitness, I was like, okay, I'm going to go check it out because I'm also interested in that. And then I realized, yep, she's the perfect combination. Then was a question whether she wants to work with us. So yeah, it's just, I think a lot of people, I have also done that mistake at first when I was like, okay, we need the big influencers, like the ones who have crazy amount of like audience. And then I realized, first of all, they're incredibly expensive. Oh
yeah.
And then the other thing is that it does not mean that whether if you're going to have a crazy amount of followers is going to give you what you want. For example, brand attention. So it can be like regarding the big massive influencers, I think it works really, really well when you need a flash sale, for example, or something like that, because a lot of people just need to know it. They don't need the, let's say, what's the name for it? Engagement that much. It's more about the fact that everyone has seen it, right? It's like flash sale. But when you want to build a brand, when you want to build an identity, when you want to build a message, you need someone who is stable in their content, who people love because of their content, and not because, wait, what is SexyStyle doing here, right? Out of nowhere. Like I don't follow such influencers who are just like grabbing every possible collaboration they can have. I'm like, yeah, that's purely because of money. You're purely not interested in that. And our influencers are interested in that. So that's the greatest aspect. They care about it. And I love when people care.
Yeah, and you also find the way to combine these funny influencers that make more funny content about it and the influencers that make this educational content. And again, same as your communication, in your content, there is this perfect balance in some way. But also, I agree with you about this idea that you need to find these influencers that people can trust, that it's not just like because they got paid, they're going to promote your product, but because people trust their opinion also about health topics or relationships topics and etc. Yeah, that's cool. I'm not quite sure when this episode is going to go live, but and if the topic for our Baltic Brand Talks is already going to be known, but Andris allowed me to give a little spoiler. So basically, this year in our Baltic Brand Forum, we're going to be talking about brand culture relevance. And I know it's like huge buzzword, and it's definitely something that gets misunderstood a lot. So my question to you is, what is cultural relevance for you if you talk about brands? And if is it relevant for SexyStyle with this very much intended pun?
How is it usually implemented within brands? Can you tell me a bit more about it? Because I've heard of the buzzword, but I think it's for me, it has always been more of a buzzword. I'm not going to lie. So maybe you can explain a bit more about it so I can answer fully. So maybe it's just, I already have an answer. I just don't know the meaning behind the buzzwords. So,
okay, we can do that as well. Because if you Google, you're going to find many different articles, and some call it that, and someone else call it a completely different thing. I will tell you my opinion. For me, there is many different levels, you know, like there is this not very deep level that cultural relevance is just our ability to quickly react on something. Like, you know, there is a TikTok trend or is some event or some celebrity did something, and we just, as a brand, we quickly react to this pop culture or culture. And that's one thing. Quite effective for sure, especially on social media channels, but more maybe this deeper level when we as a brand, we know our audience, our community, we can also call it like that, and we know their culture, you know, that's how they live, what's important for them, what they enjoy, and we find ways how to implement our communication into our day culture, their lifestyle.
Yeah, I think it's more about the fact whether you are referencing the culture, right? Like the social media culture.
That's also a big question, of course.
Yeah, and here we have to keep in mind on what kind of content does your followers engage to. So obviously we don't know all about that. I don't know. I have no idea, for example, if my top 30 biggest followers on Instagram are the ones who engage the most also follow the same things I do on TikTok. So obviously there are massive like trends, for example, Pedro Pascal, right? So it's like everywhere on the internet. I think everyone knows about it. the question is whether our audience, which is older than I am, for example, are they going to be feeling the same way about Pedro Pascal?
Exactly.
Because maybe they're going to be like, okay, who is this? Okay, I've seen him on Game of Thrones, but why on earth is he here? So I don't think you should jump into every possible trend there is because, well, yeah, you can do it, but then you do have to know your audience. And at the same time, I do think you can never know fully your audience. So here it comes again. Then we have also tried trends, and some of them have failed, and it's fine. Failure sometimes happens. It's part of the process, right? There's the saying in Latvian that nekļūdās tas, kurš nemēģina. So the ones who do not try or attempt, they do not fail. But
also the ones who don't drink champagne.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a nicer one for advertising agency. I get it. You have those champagne things.
But it's Friday.
Yeah, I know. Where is my champagne? I'm just kidding. Yeah, I just think that you do not have to jump on every single global trend there is because let's be honest, some of them are pretty dumb. And they're not relevant.
They're not relevant.
They're not relevant to your brand. Yeah. There can be dumb, funny ones which are completely relevant to your brand. Is it relevant to me? No. Can you make it relevant? Yes, maybe. Is it going to look good at the end? No idea. We can see. So yeah, I think you try it. And you can also try it by not posting it, but just trying to film it and realizing, yeah, this looks like shit. This looks like garbage. Let's be honest. But yeah, I just don't think everyone should jump on every single trend there is. For example, there was this trend. What was it? What I wanted to say. Yeah, this one, which is about Sabrina Carpenter, right? Which is is he stupid or is he...
it's a new one.
Useless. I have a better word, man-child. Well, I can maybe think of an idea where I can use it for SexyStyle, but honestly, yeah, what am I going to say that about a sex toy? Well, no, we don't want to say that. Come on, we sell them. It doesn't align with our branding. What can we say about it? Well, okay, maybe I do know something, but it's you have to know where you're going to put it. You can't just put it about everything, right? So you have to have an idea. So yeah, and also how to not get let's say in trouble for that, right? So it's just, yeah, maybe the outrage is going to be bigger than your wanted impact. And, there are sayings in PR every PR is great PR. Well, I don't really agree with that. So you have to think about the consequences as well. So, yeah.
Okay. I agree with you that you don't need to jump on every trend.
So I realized, I understand what you're meaning behind the cultural relevance. I'm it's like a buzzword. I have heard about it. So I do have opinion on that. Maybe I just haven't done my research on how other brands view it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely understand that it's something that I think we all do as marketers. We all think about it, but maybe we just don't put it into boards. We don't call it in this way, That's why we're also asking this question, how different people understand what this cultural relevance means. But I totally agree with you that you don't need to jump on every trend. You need to understand if it's relevant for you as a brand and if it's relevant for your audience as well. Because if it's a match for both, then that's what you're gonna do.
And there's the creativity which comes into mind as well. Just do not copy every single thing you see. Yeah. Keep in mind the fact that you do have to work through it. Don't just copy paste. That's not gonna work.
Yeah, it's not going to help you also show your brand personality or what you're trying to say.
I also see that, for example, on TikTok, when I scroll through and I'm okay, this is the 8th time I have heard this audio and I'm this is not unique anymore. Okay, the first 5 were nice. And I'm what is it going to be with, oh yeah, it's the same thing, just from a different state of the United States. I'm thank you, not interested. So yeah, think about it. What can make it unique or more tailored to your audience?
Yeah, but also, for example, you mentioned this TikTok, and I believe these all algorithms that getting smarter and smarter every day, they also influence us as people working in marketing or advertising, how well we can tell when something is trendy. Because is it really trendy because you saw it on your For You page, or it's just because its algorithm find it for you and no one else haven't seen it before? I believe it was easier before because everybody saw kind of the same things and what's popular, what is actually popular, but now it might be very tailored for you.
Yeah, tailored, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We have some questions that we ask everybody because we're making this tiny library of answers to use them for inspiration. The first one is there any brand that you admire, maybe in a Baltic level or globally?
I really love Mother's marketing. Mother is a great example of how to do marketing right. I love their marketing. Truly, I love their branding. I think they have a massive, amazing, great team behind it. Yeah, I hope they value their employees. Regarding worldwide, well, I'm a sucker for movies.
Okay.
So I'm not going to lie, A24 with their marketing and their production level. Oh my God. Oh, that's a dream team. I would die to work at A24. Sorry,
Okay.
SexyStyle. Yeah, A24 is my...
If you want, we can cut this part, or maybe you can also. I can imagine Madara collaboration with SexyStyle in some ways. Probably we can try to pitch that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you work with Madara?
No, not really. Yeah. But if one day we're gonna be working with Madara, I will call you. Yeah. We have another question, kind of related. What is your sources of inspiration, professionally or also personally? Okay, so I can kind of differentiate like those two things regarding what sparks an interest and inspiration in me, but I do think that they kind of mix and interline, right? Because how can you switch your brain mode from, okay, this is work inspiration and this is just my personal inspiration? Like, I don't have those files in my brain. Okay, I do, but it's not like they are not in the same brain. It's the same wire. So whenever I feel like I need a daily dose of inspiration, I scroll through Pinterest. And obviously, it's also tailor-made for you. It's obviously based on your saves and your likes, blah, blah, blah. But it gives me so much fun time just to have those 3 minutes in my morning or midday break where I'm just like, okay, I need to see something pretty or something creative or something I want to watch later or something I want to do. And I'm like, wait, we could do this for SexyStyle, or wait, I could do this for my own design. And I'm like so inspired by Pinterest. And then I just search more through it. And I'm like, okay, who was the author? And I find her blog post, or I find her Instagram, or I find her website. And I'm like, oh, there's so much cool content. And I have found so many cool designs that way. I have found so many interesting ideas for photo shoots that way. Yeah, it's just my source of daily inspiration for just the little middle day break. And I messed up my words. It's like I have champagne here, it's coffee. Oh yeah, we can see that.
Yeah. And about my own personal, I would say movies. As I said, I'm a sucker for movies. That's my favorite art form. And yes, I do think movies are art. Fight me.
I do think that advertising is an art. Fight me.
Same. And movies and conversations with people is the fact that we as a society, we live so much in our heads. And you sometimes feel really vulnerable when sharing something with a person. You have always been that way. But you can find so much joy in talking with someone. You can find so much inspiration with someone just talking about nonsense, or talking about Charles Dickens novels, or talking about A24 Materialists movie with Pedro Pascal, right? Or you can just talk about your aspirations and dreams, and someone can be like, yeah, I can imagine you doing that. And you're like, really? Like, what? I never thought anyone's going to say it. And they're like, yep, totally, 100%. And you feel this sudden burst of energy and this happiness and inspiration. So yeah, I would say movies and talking to people.
I like this idea about talking to people, and also this idea that we live in our heads.
Yeah.
And okay, maybe we as society do, but I think it's especially dangerous for us as a communication people, because if your only interest is marketing or related things, that I don't believe you can really be good at your job, because you need this broader range of interest to come up with creative ideas. Yeah. And in this conversation, I also feel how your personal interest affected your professional work, because I feel from the SexyStyle communication and from this conversation that you really found a way how to use them, and how to maybe use SexyStyle as a platform also to talk about them.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say that sometimes rage inspires me. Which is maybe a contradiction or like something else, but inequality inspires me, not in a positive way. I'm so driven by the fact that there's so much inequality in our world. It drives me crazy, and sometimes I feel like I'm gonna smash my wall or something. I obviously don't do that, but it fuels me. and it fuels me with rage, which is not always a great energy, but it leads to an idea for me. So it leads to me to, I guess, your next question, whether my aspirations or something in life. But yeah, I can talk about that regarding that. So yeah.
Yeah, you kind of guessed it, but when you say rage, you mean that you see something, you know that you want to fight it, and it's inspire you, it's giving you this motivation
it's like,
and energy.
Okay, so
I love that. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, so for example, I read about injustice, and I read about, for example, violence against women, the new surveys. And I'm like, how are we still living in this world, you know? Or I read about people who fat shame people, or I read about others who think that, I don't know, Muslims are bad or something. And I'm so fueled with rage that comes out as a creative outlet for me. And I think that's a strange manifestation through it. So yeah.
Coming back to aspiration, the easiest question is always the last one. What is your ultimate success looks like for you?
On a personal level?
As you want.
I would wish to see 20 years from now, when maybe I have kids, that my daughter never has to learn what it means to hide because of violence, or how to be safe on the streets because a man can approach her, or how she must yell no if the man is trying to grape her or something. That's my ultimate goal. That if I see a little kid on the train or on the bus, I don't have to think about, okay, what if in 3 years somebody is going to harass her at the age of 9 because she's a little pretty baby doll? I hope in 20 years I don't have to think about that.
Okay, that's a very good answer, and it's also related to equality. I lied to you. It was not the last question because your answer inspired more.
Okay.
Just one more. You mentioned this equality, and your last reply also was related to equality, I believe. Do you think that the brands can play the role in building the equality in society? Because I believe we all read these articles about global brands making campaigns about many different social topics like body positivity, like women rights, gay rights, etc. Maybe not so much here in Latvia. But do you think that the brands have this power, or it's not up to them?
Oh, hell yeah, it's up to them. Oh, hell yeah. Like, it is your mission. If you're a big brand, you have to talk about your values. Your values cannot be, we just give free samples. No, what are your core values? What is the reason behind the fact that you have a lot of money now? Like, what are you giving those people who are in need? Or, for example, how are you donating your money if you have a lot of it? Or how are you going to, it's just, I don't think that every single brand that there is on a planet is like the super positive, I'm going to fix everything brand. No, but it should be that way that when you think about your values, you have something in mind, whether it be animal saving, bulls saving from torturing in Spain, whether it can be turtles without plastic in their noses, or it can be women's rights or children's rights, or I don't know, whatever rights. Whatever fits the glove, right, for your brand and your identity. But there are people behind the brand. Brand is not a ChatGPT made thing. Brand
for now.
Yeah, for now. I don't think it's ever going to be. But that's another topic. It's about the fact that people have made brands and people are behind the brands. And what matters is that how are you going to tell the story of what is important for your own personal business? And I do think it's important that if you can have a change, like, it doesn't mean you have to have billboards outside, right? It costs a lot of money. I completely get it. I work in marketing. I know how much it costs. It's about the fact that you can at least talk about it on your social media. Or you can make a funny video about the fact that, okay, people do not know the difference between gender and sex, right? Or something like that. But you need to talk about it. Because that's also, even if you think from a materialistic point of view, that's how you're going to get engagement. So, yeah, even if you don't like the whole nice idea behind the fact that you can educate people or bring awareness to it, at least it's going to get you revenue. So,
yeah, purpose also can be profitable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's a great note to end this podcast. We talk a lot about intimacy. We talk a little bit of marketing as well.
Yeah.
I know it was a great talk with you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.